Charleston has become one of the most desirable places to live in the Southeast. But with all the growth and national attention the city has been getting, a lot of people are asking the same question. How expensive has it actually become? There's also a lot of outdated information floating around online, and the cost of living here has changed quite a bit over the past few years. Another big question people have is, what will things look like going into 2026? By the end of this video, you should have a much clearer idea of what it actually costs to live comfortably in Charleston in 2026. But first, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Overall, Charleston's cost of living is expected to increase slightly going into 2026. It will remain higher than the South Carolina average and will likely sit above the national average as well, usually by around 1 to 3%. Housing is still the biggest driver of cost here. As mortgage interest rates begin to decline over the next year, demand will likely increase again, which usually pushes home prices higher. That doesn't just affect home prices either, it also impacts rent, insurance, utilities, and property taxes. Outside of housing, Charleston is fairly middle of the road in terms of cost of living. You will still see a small increase in most categories compared to a few years ago, but that's expected in a growing coastal city where lifestyle, economy, and culture continue to attract people from all over the country. On top of that, normal national inflation also plays a role. Now, Charleston is not a cheap place to live, but it's also not extremely expensive compared to many coastal cities. It is still significantly more affordable than places on the West Coast or in the Northeast. For many people, the lifestyle here justifies the price. And when you compare Charleston to other coastal markets along the East Coast, it still stands out as one of the better values. Housing is where most people will feel the biggest impact. In 2026, Charleston rents are expected to stay close to what we saw in late 2025. Most rentals fall somewhere between $2,000 and $2,800 per month. In the $2,000 range, you'll typically find a one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment somewhere between 650 and 900 square feet. Once you move into the $2,500 to $2,800 range, that usually gets you a two-bedroom, two-bathroom apartment with around 900 to 1,200 square feet. Rents can easily jump into the $3,000 to $4,000 range if you're closer to downtown Charleston, the beaches, or in high-demand suburbs like Mount Pleasant or Daniel Island. Other areas like Somerville, Goose Creek, Hanahan, and parts of West Ashley are still more affordable, but even those areas have seen rent increases as new schools, master plan communities, and new amenities continue to be built. If you're thinking about buying a home here, the median home price in the Charleston area was around $422,000 in November of 2025. Depending on your loan type, down payment, and property taxes, that could translate into a monthly mortgage payment somewhere between roughly $2,500 and $4,000. Because of that, it's actually possible in some cases to buy a home for a similar monthly cost to renting, and sometimes even less. That is especially true in some of the more affordable areas mentioned earlier. However, this may shift as mortgage rates begin to decline through 2026 and potentially into early 2027. When interest rates drop, more buyers enter the market. That increased demand tends to push home prices up. Another factor is relocation. Many people moving here from higher cost areas like New York or Washington or DC view Charleston as relatively affordable, which continues to put upward pressure on prices. Whether you're renting or buying, housing will likely be the largest part of your monthly budget. The good news is that inventory has started to increase compared to a few years ago. Because of that, the market has shifted closer to a balanced environment, which means buyers generally have more negotiating power than they did during the peak frenzy a few years back. Utilities are another area where people sometimes notice a difference after moving here. Charleston has a humid, subtropical climate, and that plays a huge role in utility costs. Electricity prices tend to sit slightly above the national average because our summers are long and humid. Air conditioning runs for more months of the year than many newcomers expect. Most households can expect total utilities to fall somewhere between $250 and $400 per month. That usually includes electricity, water, sewer, and trash. The exact number depends on the exact size of the home, the age of the property, as well as the neighborhood. Older homes, especially downtown or in parts of North Charleston, can sometimes run higher because often they have older windows and less insulation. Water and sewer costs have also gradually increased as the region continues expanding infrastructure to keep up with population growth. On the other hand, many newer communities offer recently built homes with better insulation and more energy efficient appliances, which can help keep utility costs lower. In Charleston, the age of the home and the location can make a noticeable difference when it comes to utilities. Groceries in Charleston tend to be slightly above the national average, but not dramatically higher. Basic grocery items like bread, milk, and eggs usually cost around 2 to 5% more than the national average. According to PayScale estimates, the average resident spends about $300 to $325 per month on groceries. A family of four typically spends somewhere between $850 and $1,300 per month, depending on eating habits and household size. Transportation is another important factor. Charleston is still a very car-dependent city, and public transportation is not something most residents rely on day to day. For the most part, Charleston functions as a commuter city. Car insurance costs are fairly typical for a coastal metro area. Gas prices in Charleston actually come in below the national average at times. As of December 2025, gas prices were around $2.65 per gallon locally, while the national average was closer to $3. Lower fuel taxes in South Carolina and strong fuel supply access through nearby ports and pipelines help keep prices a little bit lower. One thing many newcomers underestimate is a true commute time. Where you live compared to where you work can make a big difference. For example, living in Somerville or Goose Creek while working downtown can add a noticeable amount of time to your daily commute during rush hour. Childcare is another major expense for families in Charleston. In 2025, childcare costs in the area generally ranged between $750 and $960 per month, depending on the program, location, age group, and number of children enrolled. Those numbers are expected to increase slightly in 2026 as population growth continues and demand rises. Many parents also mention that some of the most popular daycare centers have long waiting lists. Costs are usually higher in areas like Mount Pleasant, Daniel Island, and downtown Charleston compared to places like Goose Creek or Somerville. For many families, childcare ends up being one of the largest monthly expenses right alongside housing. One of the most common questions people ask is what kind of income you actually need in order to live comfortably in Charleston. Using living wage data from MIT for Charleston County and comparing it with the lower housing costs and tax structure in Berkeley County gives a good general picture. The median sales price for a single-family home in Charleston County reached around $700,000 in November of 2025, but that number includes higher-end areas like the beach towns and Mount Pleasant, which pull the average up. In areas like West Ashley or North Charleston, homes are commonly found between $300,000 and $600,000. A home around $550,000 is often a realistic benchmark for many West Ashley neighborhoods. For a single person renting in Charleston County, a comfortable income usually starts around $50,000 per year to cover basic expenses. A salary in the $68,000 to $75,000 range generally provides more breathing room. For couples or families, especially if childcare is involved or more space is needed, a comfortable household income typically falls between $95,000 and $125,000. If you move to Berkeley County, housing costs can drop noticeably. Areas like Goose Creek, Hanahan, Moncks Corner, and Somerville tend to have lower rents, lower property taxes, and lower median home prices compared to many parts of Charleston County. Because of that, a single person can often live comfortably around there with an income between about $52,000 and $68,000. For a family of four, a comfortable range might fall between $80,000 and $100,000 depending on lifestyle and housing choices. Berkeley County is also one of the fastest growing counties in South Carolina, and property taxes there can be up to 30% lower than Charleston County. Many families choose Berkeley County because it can offer a better balance between affordability and proximity to major employers, especially around North Charleston. But ultimately, the best place to live depends on your commute, your lifestyle, and what matters most to you and your family. Charleston in 2026 will likely be a little bit more expensive than it was a few years ago, but the increase is expected to be fairly modest. People move here for the lifestyle. You have beaches, boating, historic neighborhoods, incredible restaurants, and year-round outdoor living. When you compare Charleston to other coastal cities that offer similar amenities, it still stands out as one of the better value markets along the East Coast. Understanding the major cost categories like housing, utilities, childcare, and transportation can help you decide whether renting or buying makes the most sense for your situation. If you're thinking about moving to Charleston, buying a home here, or even just exploring the market, there's one thing you should know. A lot of the best opportunities never actually make it to Zillow or other public websites. Because of the number of deals we're involved in on the Sean Cleary team, I often see properties before they officially hit the market. If you want access to off-market opportunities, feel free to reach out. And being local also matters in a market like Charleston. I've lived here for over 15 years, and the local perspective helps when it comes to understanding neighborhoods, commute patterns, development, and which areas are most likely to hold long-term value. If you're thinking about buying, relocating, or just want to understand the Charleston market better, reach out anytime. I'm always happy to help.